I'm Howie Lim. This is Money Hacks by the Business Times. I don't know about you, but I'm constantly confused about how to categorize financial goals into needs, wants, and wishes for better decision-making. I feel as though I need everything.
So the idea behind the needs, wants, and wishes is really to be able to fulfill your basic necessities, but to also be able to explore beyond that.
Okay, so we're getting right into it. Welcome to Money Hacks, a podcast series by the Business Times, where we explore useful financial tips to help you on your money managing and wealth growing journey. I'm Howie Lim. And if you have feedback or an idea for a podcast episode, do get in touch, btpodcasts@sph.com.sg. And helping us out today, George Stefanou, financial advisor and author.
Thanks for having me. It's really the merging of both, when it comes to money management, IQ and EQ. Recognizing that money is more than just accumulation of stuff or items, but really it's a tool in which you can utilize to explore your needs, your wants, and your wishes. Having that end game in mind as you invest in recognizing what we need to do in order to gain fulfillment in your life. Money is not the end all be all. It's really the life that it allows you to live by means of it.
Great. Not only do we have to be smart, we have to be well adjusted as well. What about the needs, wants, and wishes thingy we talked about at the beginning, George?
Certainly you have your essentials, you have your needs. Everyone needs a warm place to sleep and to be able to put food on the table, your healthcare, all those kind of things. But beyond that, sometimes we really need, with some clients, for instance, to be able to explore their wants and wishes, because some have a hard time, especially if they came first generation wealthy or any of those kind of things and have emerged from the bottom, so to speak, how to get out of that scarcity mindset in which wealth can actually be of value in exploring and doing things. So the idea behind the needs, wants, and wishes is really to be able to fulfill your basic necessities, but to also be able to explore beyond that. Your wants and your wishes, sometimes it takes a little bit of a consultative approach to recognize the fact that what is it that I want or what I wish? Many people, when they go through a shift, perhaps into retirement, for instance, so much of who they identify as was wrapped up in what they did for a living. When that work ends, perhaps, and you've perhaps accumulated your nest egg, where is that identification?
Oh no, I fear I may be heading in that direction. So what can we do, George?
So recognizing what is on your bucket list. What do you want people to say about you when you're not here anymore? And what do you want to make sure that you were able to accomplish along the way? It's very difficult to get over that, what we call scarcity mindset. They're trapped in this cycle of, hey, I don't have it because I didn't have it. Time is money too. This is what money can afford you, as opposed to, again, just seeing numbers on a statement. So again, getting that permission to spend is part of that mindset shift that sometimes people need as you go along, and recognizing that.
Fair enough. Reminds me of my mom telling me all the time, money in your pocket isn't going to bite you. You don't have to be so eager to get rid of it.
In the accumulation phase, little spending as well as large spending can bite you. And there's certain people that I like to call that are allergic to money. They just can't get rid of it fast enough. They have nothing to do with it. What I find, though, more often than not, is not so much that small benefit, that small luxury. Maybe it is a cup of coffee or whatever it is, that latte factor, but often it's a larger expenditure. It's very interesting, for instance, on social media, at least in the United States, when you purchase a car, everybody praises you. Congratulations. But they never talk to you about the payment that's involved or that deterioration of wealth. And did you think about it when it was a depreciating asset? However, some will kind of turn their nose up on the idea that you went on a vacation and you spent the money on a vacation. Well, that vacation produces really something of value that continues to pay because you had those memories forever. But certainly, as a certified financial planner, if the tightening of the reins of spending is what's preventing you from achieving your goals, that's a whole different set of issues that certainly need to be addressed. Don't live just for the weekend either, right? So we have to put away for the future so that we have something at the end of the day.
We hear this a lot, though. Figure out what kind of person you are so investing will be easier. It's really necessary, isn't it? And how has it factored into, say, this approach that you've come up with, your 5 lanes of personal finance and matching investments with one's risk tolerance?
When it comes to personal finance and investing, knowledge is certainly power, because otherwise money becomes an enigma. And in the US, many will play the lotto. The lottery is really a tax on those who can't do math. Because the reality is you're spending money on something that the odds are incredibly small. But because the payout is so large, they dream about this large payout. But it's another get-rich-quick kind of situation. it's highly unlikely it's not really the case of accumulation of wealth. When you start to take away the market from the market, so to speak, and it's not this boogeyman, that you break it down to the idea of these are real companies that you own a share of. Perhaps you'll never be able to build a company like Apple or Microsoft or Google or whatever it may be, not just tech companies, but any company from the ground up. But you can be a sharer of the profits of that company by owning shares of them. And then it's a matter of different companies and different investments operate differently.
How about those 5 lanes of personal finance, though? You're using a traffic analogy, right?
We start off the emergency lane. You're pulled over to the side of the road. You're usually stopped, hopefully. There's something that happened, a rattling that happened in your car. You pulled over to the side of the road to check things out. And I liken it with clients to say, okay, well, you do that out of safety, to be out of the harm's way of traffic. However, if you have small children or grandchildren in the car and they ask you while you're in the emergency lane if it would be okay on the side of the highway, if they could just play out by the car on the side of the road, they promise they won't go into one of the regular lanes. They'll just stay in the emergency lane. Well, no loving parent will allow them to do that because they could get sideswiped. And the emergency lane really stands for cash equivalents. And the idea being there that you can also get sideswiped, even though it's safe, it can become a safety trap. And the idea that there's a giant semi-truck with the words inflation plastered on the side that can run you over without you thinking about it. And so we talk about that as a lane, but the cash serves its purpose. You should have an emergency fund. You should have that, whether that be 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever it is within your comfort zone. And that affords you the ability to move on to the next lane and add some to the next lane in finance.
Okay, hold that thought. We have a break to get to. George Stefanou, financial advisor and author, will get into the other 4 lanes of personal finance. He's just covered the emergency lane, probably where I'm parked right now with flat tires and all. More in a moment.
Lens on Singapore is now bigger and better. The same deep dive exploration of socioeconomic and geopolitical issues which impact our lives here in Singapore and the region is now a video podcast. If watching a conversation is your thing, join Claressa Monteiro in monthly conversations about things that matter. Subscribe to the BT Lens On playlist in the podcast tab of the Business Times YouTube channel and start watching today. BT Lens On Singapore, now available in audio and video.
And now, back to Money Hacks from the Business Times.
Welcome back. Hit us, George. Lanes 2 through 5.
That next lane I call the bus lane. Say we're going 70 miles an hour is the posted speed limit. We have 0 miles an hour in the emergency lane, say 45 miles in the bus lane. Slow and steady along the way. I call that fixed income. So your bonds, your CDs, your things of that nature. Now, I also differentiate in the book that fixed income is not all equal. You can have high yield or junk bonds. You can have quality and treasuries or whatever it may be. But 45 and a 70, looking at that, you see a bus, most people aren't going there. They're still going to get tailgated by that semi-truck of inflation. They may not get blown by completely, but it's certainly not going to keep the pace quite as well. Well, then you have the next lane. Now, the next lane I call the minivan lane, or it's nothing flashy or attractive, but it's very practical. And so I call that the growth and income lane. Primarily dividend paying, large cap stocks, household names, things that you're comfortable with, that you likely use every day and are well-established companies. I would say those go probably around 60 miles an hour out of a 70, a little bit more on the conservative side, but certainly fast enough that if you hit a pothole, you'll feel it. We see that during downturns, even in stocks of that nature.
Nice. Okay, recap. Emergency lane, cash and cash equivalents. Then there's the bus lane, fixed income in the form of bonds, CDs and such. Then comes the minivan lane or growth income lane with dividend paying, large cap, etc. type things. Then what?
The next lane over, I call the growth lane, or in this case, I liken it to a sports car. It'll be going 75 and a 70, probably what most people push the limits just a little bit, add that growth along the way. Typically in areas, what you're missing in that lane, we said growth versus the income or growth and income lanes. And you typically don't see a lot of dividends. Mainly the growth is being reinvested in the company to go faster and faster. Think of those same companies that were in the 60 mile an hour lane, but in their more formative years, usually mid-cap, small-cap companies. The final lane being the aggressive lane, or what I call the sports bike lane. That sports bike lane is somebody going 90 miles an hour in a 70, very aggressive. Perhaps it's emerging markets, perhaps it's cryptocurrencies, huge payoffs, ability to get a substantial reward. But again, if you hit a pothole, forget the emergency lane, you're in the emergency room in that case, right? So you have to worry about those kind of things. So again, which lane is right for you? It's actually not one lane. You can choose to have an allocation to each of the lanes and probably should.
I'm starting to get confused again, George. Shouldn't we just stick to our lanes? Why do we need to have not just one lane?
Because if a traffic jam occurs, our lane stops, the lane next to us starts to move. We're tempted, but we said we've seen this story before. We wait it out, but if it continues to move and ours stays stopped for long enough, we inevitably give up and we jump to the next lane. And as Murphy's Law would have it, as soon as we turn over to that lane sure enough stops in our old lane that goes. And that's the same thing with investing. Buy low, sell high. Everyone knows it, but most people don't do it. They get out of the right lanes and into the wrong lanes just at the wrong time simply because they don't have the patience to withstand it. There's a great quote by Warren Buffett that says the markets are really nothing more than a mechanism in which wealth is transferred from the inpatient to the patient. And that certainly applies to the investment highway, so to speak, in the 5 lanes of personal finance when it comes to that. So I use that illustration. What is the level of risk I'm taking in the different categories that I might invest in? And put some real basic, most people understand driving in the different lanes and going faster and whatnot. As to where are you comfortable driving, which lane would you like to start out with, or a few lanes, and what portion should we have in each lane along the way?
That's why diversification is so important. What about managing risks as we chase those returns, so to speak?
That's a really good point. For instance, a bucket strategy. Keep enough in the cash or the emergency lane, as well as the bus lane or the fixed income lane, to weather those storms that are in the faster paced lanes, the equity markets, for instance. Manage that balance between the two and have enough there to go through a downturn. Now, whether that's 5 years worth of distributions, whether it's 6, 7, whatever it is, you have to kind of know your numbers and then make sure that you have that accumulated to that effect. Now, in your accumulation years, your first years, you really need that growth on your side. That's more of a luxury down the road once you've accumulated a nest egg that you now want to protect. They go to the store, and when you're purchasing just about anything now, it can be at Walmart or whatever, whether it's a tablet or anything, that they offer you insurance. If you can afford to replace it, then you don't need the insurance. If you can't afford it, then you need the insurance. So same thing with accumulating wealth. You don't need necessarily the broad-based diversification right out the gate when you don't have anything to insure at the end of the day. You can afford to take some of that risk along the way, but as that nest egg becomes bigger and bigger and you have more to protect, you want a little bit of that assurance, not insurance, because that's a different product, that's annuities, et cetera, but having at least that diversification along the way.
How can lay people do this, George? You talk about traffic jams and maybe storms coming and such, and we're not supposed to be listening to the noise. So what do we do?
That's a really good point as well. So there's a couple ways. First off is being diligent, turning off the noise, having your lane set, and just continuing to do so. That's why investment accounts that are drawn straight from your paycheck through retirement plans are so successful, because it takes the money before you get your hands on it. Having that in place, make it automated. Make sure you're taking enough risk to kind of grow it. It's not set it and forget it, but you do want to set it and at least allow it to do its thing. During times of panic, continue with your plan, revisit it, and make sure that you are comfortable with the risk. Certainly during a downturn, that's not the time in which to allow your emotions to get the better. Maybe create a journal of how you're feeling during that time, because now you know your threshold in which you can't take. Again, markets being different than just a poor investment. If you made a single investment that it's not going to come back, that's a different story. But if you have a well-diversified portfolio, high quality investments too, and you feel confident in it, you can continue down that. And more at the peaks is when you should kind of make those adjustments to diversify along the way. So there's another option as well, of course, is hiring someone, that is a professional. People talk about it all the time that yes, very much so, you can do it yourself. There's lots of online tools, but I also can cut my own grass or care for my own pool as well. But my time is money there. And also really that expertise of just somebody knowing how to balance the chemicals, for instance, in my pool so they don't turn green. Same thing with your investments, having that there, that behavioral coaching advisor alpha, the added value of an advisor. And the primary driver of that value is the behavioral coaching, the hand holding during those down markets. It's really no different personal finance advisor than really a personal fitness coach. We all know if we work out and we eat right, that typically we'll have the effects of losing weight and getting, in shape. Same thing with investments. We know to buy low and sell high and put away and think for the long term. We know these things, but having that accountability partner makes all the difference in the world. And hopefully your audience isn't watching this live on the video, because I still need the personal fitness instructor as well to get back in shape.
I think you look fine. Okay, last word. How do we deal with these volatile times?
One of two things will occur. Quality companies will continue to grow and find ways to adapt and create wealth and accumulate shareholder value. or aliens have invaded, something crazy has happened, whatever it may be. What's your alternative? If you're that worried and it's a genuine concern and you really think that the world is over, then maybe you're right. I think it's a pretty big call to make. But in that case, are you serious enough to invest in a bomb shelter, in dry goods, in going underground and really doing so? If that's not the case, and it's really that we've allowed politics or the news and social media, whatever it may be, affect us, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Try to stay out of the noise. It's good to be informed. We certainly need to do so, but don't let it affect your overall strategy in the long run. Try to make sure that your fundamentals are sound. Stick to the plan, created a personal investment policy statement that, hey, if the markets go down, address that towards those market peaks. If it goes down, when it goes down, because that's inevitable when it goes down, to adjust accordingly. Perhaps if it's a 10% decline, I'm going to invest 5% more, or whatever it may be that you set, that you have that comfort. And also that you had enough to begin with in the emergency lane, the bus lane, those income lanes and the emergency cash to weather that storm so you can feel comfortable enough and assured that you can make it through to the end of that journey successfully.
I wish we had more time, but thank you for your insights today, George.
Thank you very much, Howie. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me on.
Next time, is $1 million enough to retire on? If not, what is? We speak to the Weeblings to find out. A big thank you to George Stefanou, financial advisor and author, for sharing his method of personal finance with us. I'm Howie Lim, and this has been Money Hacks by the Business Times.
This is a podcast by the Business Times. Find more BT podcasts at businesstimes.com.sg/podcasts. Or wherever you get your podcasts. This podcast is meant to provide general information only. SPH Media accepts no liability for loss arising from any reliance on the podcast or use of third parties' products and services. Please consult professional advisors for independent advice.